Can you believe it's already 2020?
It's crazy.
And we've got Season 4, #Enlightened Men, all queued up and ready to go.
I am so excited about our Season 4 premiere. Actor, producer, author, and podcast host, Mr. Jon Cryer.
Right, John.
The only supervillain fighting wrongful convictions.
It's an incredible episode, and it drops on Tuesday, January 14th. We love John.
Yes, we do. And our listeners love today's super special episode re-release, DeLoco Kid, or D-Lo, the only trans person in the room.
I am such a D-Lo fan.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite episodes. I'm glad we're re-releasing it. Plus, D-Lo is such a good friend of the show. We loved his performance piece, To Tea or Not to Tea.
Yes, he is so freaking talented.
So please enjoy today's episode and join us again next week on Tuesday, January 14th for the Season 4 premiere.
#Enlightened Men. Can you finish the sentence for me? I was the only one in the room who...
was trans.
Yeah.
Was transgender.
Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins. What if the world told you that you were wrong? Not just wrong for the things you thought or said, but that you were the actual embodiment of wrong. DeLoco Kid, or D-Lo, grew up in a small immigrant community in a Los Angeles suburb. And he knew from an early age that he wasn't like other girls. But he never had the language to explain how he felt. What would you do if you only had two choices? Live inauthentically in an attempt to keep everyone happy, or live in your truth and risk being an outcast?
As I share my story across the globe, I try and say how this decision, I had top surgery. That surgery was one of the most selfish and self-loving decisions I had ever made. And I had to get to that point. Things were nutty in my mind. I kept trying to figure out how to get more happy.
This is the only one in the room. In September 2018, I found myself in an all too familiar position. Looking around the room at the other attendees at Brave Magic, a famed writer's retreat, I found myself in a sea of 600 people, and yet once again, I was there all alone. I was the only Black woman in the room. After it was over, I wrote about my experience in the Huffington Post, and something surprising happened. Comments started flooding into my DM.
Dear Laura, I'm a married gay man in my 40s. I work in a hypermasculine industry where I encounter...
I'm Craig. I'm a 40-year-old, white, forgetful Los Angelino. I spent over half of my life in a self-imposed isolation, too vain to get
Dear
even in
Laura,
rooms filled with people.
My name is Dana, and I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, where the KKK and the alt-right have been rallying. I'm Jewish, and I'm part of a tight-knit community here.
These were comments from people from all races, ethnicities, creeds, and nationalities who were moved by my piece because they too had felt othered. In this podcast, you'll hear raw, vulnerable accounts from people who are, like most of us, just eager to connect. My goal is that this podcast will make you think twice before judging the person standing next to you at a party, or in the pickup line at school, or in a crowded subway car. This podcast is for anyone who has ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone. You're listening to The Only One in the Room, presented by Lipstick and Vinyl and executively produced by Christina Barcy. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and be sure to like and leave us a review of your thoughts on the show. And if you have an Only One in the Room story you'd like to share, you can DM us on Instagram at The Only One in the Room. Enjoy the show. D-Lo, I know you're on this detox.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a fast that you break, or you just start drinking your smoothies in the morning?
Yeah, no, it's like lemon water in the morning, then smoothie, and then like you can have 2 snacks, which is 2 cups of fresh veggies or fruit, and that's it. It's like a veggie.
Damn.
Yeah, it's like a smoothie, 3-time smoothie. I kind of spread it out though.
Yeah. Do you make the smoothies yourself, or you buy them? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't take that long.
No, I know. I made a smoothie on the way here. It's like my favorite thing to do. Yeah, not in the car, but to drink on the way. That would be good, right?
Yeah.
Scott wouldn't like that because we were in his car.
Yeah.
He'd be very upset if I made a smoothie in
I'm
there.
also very OCD about
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm glad that
yeah.
you can appreciate that.
Yeah, it's like, our kitchen counter, I'll have 6 things out and he'll come in and arrange them without even looking at me. You know, he'll just like do that on the way in.
Yep.
All right, so that's your breakfast. When you're not on the cleanse, what do you normally eat for breakfast?
I usually don't eat
Breakfast.
for breakfast.
Okay.
I usually start up like around like 11, 12. I have my coffee, which was also a B when trying to get off the detox. 'Cause
yeah,
that coffee
yeah.
headache is like
Yes.
nutty. But yeah, just like sometimes it just depends. It'll be like oatmeal or eggs or
Okay.
something like that. Yeah.
I like to ask our guests what they eat for breakfast, and I think if we were keeping track, almost everybody said oatmeal, eggs, or a smoothie. Right? There wasn't much variation, so those are the popular ones. One said cream of wheat, but yeah. All right, so
Maybe because we're in LA.
maybe
You know, like if you went to the Midwest or the South.
But it sounds like a
it'd be
Midwest kind of thing, like eggs and cream of wheat, maybe more bacon,
Yeah,
and
bacon
hash browns
and
and
hash
stuff.
brown, yeah.
No,
Potatoes
no
and-
shade on the Midwest.
Oh my goodness.
You
I
guys
love
really know
bacon.
how to eat. Some of the best meals I've ever had are in the Midwest.
Bacon. And yes, absolutely. I don't eat it, but
But you love it. All right, so I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins, and this is The Only One in the Room. But as you know, I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co-host Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hi, honey. So today's guests and I were in a storytelling show together earlier this year, and he brought the house down, right, honey?
Oh, everybody was dying laughing.
Oh, my God, I was laughing so hard.
You even had visual aids. That was bonus.
Dude, I had to bring my game. I saw all the heavy hitters on the bill, so I was like, I gotta come up with some visuals. Y'all have like really nice ones. I'll just have a bunch of dildos.
Yes, you did. You projected one very large black one on the stage above our heads,
Yeah.
and I almost died.
Not a black person.
No, but a black dildo.
A jet
Yes.
black.
Well, actually, I appreciated the large white one myself.
Yeah, you did,
Seriously.
right? There was something for everybody in there, wasn't there?
Totally. There actually was something for everybody.
All right, so I'm going to do your official intro now. Dilo is a queer transgender Tamil Sri Lankan American actor, writer, comedian whose work ranges from stand-up comedy to solo theater, plays, films, music production, poetry, and spoken word. He is a co-producer for Disoriented Comedy and is currently in development on a scripted series based on his life with BTR Media. There is a documentary on Dilo's life work called Performing Girl, which won the Best Short Documentary Award at Outfast in 2013. He was also included in the Emmy-nominated mini-doc series This Is Me. His TV film credits include co-starring in the HBO series Looking, the Amazon series Transparent, the Netflix series Sense8 USA's Mr. Robot, and the feature-length film Bruising for Besos. Dilo is the creator of the writing workshop series Coming Out, Coming Home. He holds a BA from UCLA in ethnomusicology.
Welcome, Dilo.
Thank
We're so
you.
glad you're here.
I like the little bits and pieces.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I was like, oh yeah, I did that.
So I pronounced that right, ethnomusicology? Yeah. I had to look that up. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And you majored in it. So
I totally did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I didn't even want to go to college.
No.
And when my parents found out that I got in, they were like, you have to go. I was like, no, I'm going to go to video production school in London. I wanted to get as far away as possible.
Yes.
And then they found my admissions letter, and they were like, no, you're going.
You're going to
And
UCLA.
and I had to audition on 2 instruments. I was like, if I can do ethnomusicology, then yes, I'll go.
Do you want to just say what that is really quick?
It's basically like anthropology, but through the lens of people's culture.
Right. And music.
Rituals and
Yes.
music.
Yeah.
I say through their culture first and foremost because the music is sort of just the leading force, but it's really about the context within
Right.
that the music is played within, what cultural and religious and spiritual and community
Yeah.
context like that.
Which makes so much sense knowing who you are. That would be something that you would look at. I mean, not that I know you really well, but just knowing what I know about you now, it's like, okay, I can totally see him being into that.
I think that it was a good fit.
Yeah. All right. So can you tell people what trans means?
Yeah. Transgender, like someone who is transgender, because transgender is a noun more than it is, like it's not usually used as an adjective. But to be trans means that you are not necessarily aligned with what you were assigned as at birth.
Right.
So if somebody was assigned, like you come out of somebody's womb and then you're like, the doctor says, oh, you're a female, and then your whole life you don't really feel like a female. You feel more masculine or male or whatever. But I feel like trans is sort of like a spectrum, because some trans people don't necessarily only identify with the gender that is opposite as far as the binary is concerned, opposite to what they were assigned as at birth. So I have trans friends who were born, quote unquote, female or assigned female at birth, and then they identify as male now. But I have some people who were assigned female at birth who feel like they're a mix of both. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just a blend. I personally feel like a blend, though I present masculine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that transgender kind of like can run the gamut. A lot of people use the word non-binary if you're not at all associated with only the masculine or only the feminine.
Yeah.
But that's what transgender means to me.
Cool. So can you school me a little bit on pronouns?
Yeah. Well, there are some people in the queer spectrum, so not just trans and not just non-binary. They identify with pronouns that either are gender neutral, so like they, them pronouns, or, you know, somebody...
So you would use they or them for a single person.
For a single person, yes.
Right. So if I didn't identify, you would say Laura, but also instead of she went to the store, they went to the store.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
They went to their store. It's theirs. Give it to them, you know, which I think is beautiful. And a lot of different languages across the globe have used gender-neutral pronouns.
Yeah.
Like there might be other sort of identifiers around masculine and feminine, but there are pronouns that are often used. And then, you know, sometimes Laura, you might say, my name is Laura, but I like to be referred to as he, him. And somebody might be like, but that doesn't connect for me.
Right.
And it's like, so who cares if it doesn't connect for you? It connects for Laura. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, you know, I think that respecting where people are coming from is just the same as respecting, like, what name they go by or how they want to be referred to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as simple as that.
Interesting. So you were born on the East Coast, right? But you grew up out here in Los Angeles in a suburb of Los Angeles that I've been to a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's fucking
Is it
far
really
away.
a suburb? Like,
I don't know.
It's so funny, right? Like you go out there and you're like,
it's like the desert out there. It's like the moon, right? So yeah, you grew up in Lancaster.
Yeah.
No shade on Lancaster. It's
No shade
really,
at all.
No shade at all. But
They raised me.
Right. You grew up in an immigrant culture. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so my father is a physician, a general practice physician, and so the island, I need to just sort of talk about the island first. So there's been a civil war that's been going on there, and so the majority of...
Which island?
In Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka, okay.
And so the majority of the island is comprised of Sinhalese people who are primarily Buddhist, Theravada Buddhist. And so the civil war has been between largely by the Sri Lankan government and the Tamil Tigers, which was the liberation group.
Okay.
It used to be that the Tamils in Sri Lanka were almost up to like 15 to 17% of the population. I think maybe even higher. I might be giving you wrong stats, but they were a smaller group. And so the war between them has been because the Buddhists, they want it to be a single nation. You know what I'm saying? So it is a genocide, though if you talk to a Sinhalese person, they would give you a history that was saying like, no, Tamils were in power after the British, and so we were trying to take our power out. But that's not... The fact is true that there were posts that the British gave to Tamil, because that's colonization. Like, anytime somebody's trying to colonize, they take the smaller group, put them in places of power so that there can be like a rift and it never gets back to the British. That's part of imperialism, right? But it wasn't that the Tamils had power. Like, there was no way that they could have power in the country. So given the fact that my father was in the north, which is kind of like it's not as developed, but, you know, they thrived and everything worked or whatever. So my father's part of that population of people from the north of Sri Lanka, and they had access to education that was kind of standard, right? He also sat an exam that put him into the Sri Lankan University. There he met other Tamil people who were also doing the same thing. So America, during the brain drain, was calling everybody to come over to the States, and it was like him and his batchmates. And so one ended up coming to Lancaster and was like, come, everybody come, there's jobs here.
Yeah.
So that's like literally the story that randomly you have in the desert a bunch of Tamil Sri Lankan people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so that's how we grew up. Like, I almost didn't feel racism as much because every day was brownness for me.
So you're in, let's just say, lower income white culture.
Yeah.
But you operate within the confines of this brown community there. Do you speak?
I don't speak Tamil. I can understand it.
You can
but
understand it.
I'm like really bad at speaking it.
Okay.
Like, it probably started getting developed after I was in high school. We got a mall.
You got a
That
mall.
was a big deal.
Yes.
That was a big deal. It doesn't have levels. It's just flat. So you could like spend all day with your friends during high school just walking from one end to the other end.
That's beautiful.
And and then we got a huge jail, a maximum security jail, which is, it's like more than half a mile long. And it's such a deep thing. So that ended up bringing jobs and people who were incarcerated, their families, and also cheaper housing. So then the demographics started changing.
Yeah.
But we're talking solidly that there are more lower income to middle class people in Lancaster, Palmdale area.
This whole time, so the mall comes, the jail comes, but you're feeling pretty safe where you are? You don't feel kind of the threat of racism or judgment?
No.
You do?
For sure we do.
Yeah.
Because also Lancaster was known as the place where the KKK established their first West Coast church. So that's historically been kind of the lay of the land there. So the white people were kind of like, okay, we're polite. But you could feel this thing. And then my father always talked about, look, the KKK is still happening here. There's a rapper named Afroman who sang the song Because I Got High. Do you know the song?
Yes.
Yeah. He had a song about... Yeah.
But then I got high.
Yeah. And he has a song where in the video he alludes to the fact, because he's from Palmdale, that there's KKK there as well.
Right. And
So-
Palmdale is right next to
Lancaster,
so-
Palmdale is
yeah.
kind of like a mush of a larger city, right?
Yeah.
So we heard about these things, and my father had patients that were neo-Nazis and just general sort of disdain towards people of color in Lancaster that just let us know we always need to keep our eye out.
Right, so you were always
definitely felt that for sure. I think that there's something when you are like the fly in the buttermilk, then you start almost drowning in the buttermilk, and then you're like, I am the buttermilk. And that didn't happen to us. Like, we were Tamil. You know what I'm saying? We were Sri Lankan. We were like, I meet a lot of people of color or immigrants who want to be white.
Yeah.
That's a big desire.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that never happened with us. Or maybe it did, but it definitely didn't happen in my family or the people that we were closest to, you know.
We're going to take just a quick break to tell you about a cool new product that Scott and I discovered. And we'll get back to our guest's amazing Only One story in just a minute. Hun, tell me about this new obsession.
Honey, I have this new obsession with this new deodorant, Myro. It's a little embarrassing to say, but I really do like this product.
Well, I like the name, Myro.
Myro. There's a lot more to like about it. It's all natural. There's no toxic anything, no aluminum, no parabens. Clinically tested for safety and effectiveness. It's also cruelty-free.
Oh, good. No animal testing.
Right?
Yeah.
Myro is made with a custom blend of essential oils that release over time, so to keep you fresh, and natural cornstarch and sage to keep you dry.
Cornstarch and sage? That's some good stuff right there.
Yeah. Here's how it works. You choose the scent and the color of your case. The formula is aloe-based for a soothing, comfortable glide with a bacteria-neutralizing citrus and probiotics that keep you smelling great.
I like the orange case for travel. It's easy to find.
Yeah, you get a refresh every 3 months delivered right to your door, conveniently timed for when you run out.
I hate running out of things.
You sure do, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
The refillable cases and mood-inspiring scents are good for you and the planet. And because the case is refillable, Myro reduces plastic waste by 50% versus typical drugstore deodorants.
Now that's what's up. And speaking of 50%, if you want to try Myro and get 50% off your order and get started today for just $5, visit mymyro.com/theonlyone and use the promo code TheOnlyOne.
You mean if you want to try Myro, you can get 50% off your order and get started today for just $5?
Yep. So visit mymyro.com/theonlyone and use the promo code TheOnlyOne to get your obsession-worthy, naturally effective deodorant delivered right to your door. Please, let's make the world smell better.
Please.
Hun, we almost never argue, right?
Almost never.
But the closest thing we get to arguing is whenever you say, "What's for dinner?" and I say back what I always say back, "I don't know."
Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
That's why I'm all thank God for HelloFresh.
Yeah, we love HelloFresh.
And even though you normally do all the cooking, for which I'm really appreciative, I can even make us dinner with HelloFresh. In fact, when I made that chicken parm last night, I found that cooking was actually enjoyable, almost meditative.
Here's how it works. They send you a special insulated box to your doorstep, and inside is everything you need to make amazing meals for the week.
Hun, talk about the recipe cards with pictures.
I got this, hon. Everything is laid out. It's super simple. Everything was measured out and ready to go. But it doesn't taste simple. I mean, the layers of flavors were really rich and delicious.
And you can see as soon as you open the box that you've got quality products. You can order classic, veggie, or family. You can switch it up, too, if you want. Tell them about our favorite one, hun, with the fig sauce.
Right, it was that figgy pork tenderloin with the roasted potatoes and string beans. The meat was incredibly tender, super flavorful, and it came out the perfect temperature, and everything was done at the same time, 30 minutes, just like they said.
I could eat that right now. You're totally making me hungry. So if you want to eliminate what's for dinner arguments and have this super easy, fresh deliciousness delivered right to your door, go to HelloFresh.com/TheOnlyOne80 and enter the code TheOnlyOne80 for $80 off your first month.
Are you serious? That's like receiving 8 meals for free.
Can we get in on that? But seriously, go to HelloFresh.com/TheOnlyOne80 and get your order in now. Don't forget to enter the promo code TheOnlyOne80 to get that $80 discount off your first month and get ready for deliciousness. I was just going to ask you more about the culture in your family. Do you have siblings?
I had a sibling. She passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But, I mean, when I talk about my queer journey, her death definitely impacted it because I knew that I was super queer from the get-go. Like, I knew it. I had crushes on all of the older girls in our community. I was a little dude. Like, I looked like a dude. I played like a dude. Like, everybody was just like, oh, that's D, you know. Mm-hmm. Nobody questioned it. You know, it's different when you're born, assigned male at birth, and then you're exhibiting feminine behavior. Then everybody's like, oh my God, this kid is showing that he's gay, you know. Right. But when the flip happens, it's a little bit, there's a little bit more leniency. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But people started sniffing my queerness right around like 11, 12, like because I didn't grow out of the stage, right? And so they started like, you know, I was questioned like, are you gay? And I was like, no, you know, and then I just started growing out my hair and tried to like blend in, right? Mm-hmm. But my sister passed when I was 13. I already knew that this was like in the 4th grade or something in my Baptist school, they were like talking about homosexuals. And I was like, oh shit, that's me. But that's not me. Like, I don't feel like that. You know, like I knew that it was trying to say something about people who weren't just like what I considered at 11 years old to be normal couples. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I was like, but I'm a guy. Like, that can't be me. You know what I'm saying?
So in your mind, you were a guy?
In my mind, I was totally a guy.
Right, so that didn't apply to you then?
In other people's minds until somebody told them I was a guy.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? People used to come up to my parents and be like, oh, what a cute son you have, you know, and they wouldn't correct them. They were like, okay, whatever.
Right.
Or sometimes they would be like, actually, this is a girl.
Yeah.
And then watch people's eyes go. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
But you were attracted to females.
Oh yeah.
And in your mind, you were a guy. So then you couldn't be gay.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So, but also like you don't have an understanding of like what is gay, what is trans, what is this. Like people are saying it in such a negative way that you are like, I can't be that. I don't want to even seem like that. I know it's wrong. I know it's bad. And I knew that it was wrong of me to have crushes on girls even as a kid. But at least that was something I could hide. The way I presented was not, so I had to change it. Anyway, when I was in the fourth grade, I forget where it was, but I saw a Maury show, and there was a trans guy on it. And,
Maury Povich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was tripping. I was like, oh my God, that guy used to be a girl. And I felt so much hope. And it was like within a split second, the crowd is jeering and like just totally like giving him hell on this show. And so then I was like, okay, yeah.
Right.
I
So
know
they
what's up.
were not supportive.
No. And, when you're little, like, you see, like, oh, there's a possibility, and, like, in a split second, it's not a possibility, So I just kind of just kept it really quiet. At 11, I even ran away because I was like, this is too much on my parents. This is not, I know I'm a good person. Like, I even thought that in my head. I'm like, I know I'm a good person, but this is not going to fly. And so I was like, I just need to, like, get out and do what I need to do.
At 11?
At 11.
Where'd you go?
I left school and I traveled to another school, but there was a kid who I had told, and he told the
Another Tamal kid?
No. It was another outsider, another sort of like, her mother had her when she was 15 or 16, and she was living with her grandma, and nobody really liked her, and
right,
she was my friend.
Yeah.
I was friends with everybody, but like it was mostly the outsiders that I connected with. But yeah.
So you were getting back to your sister's passing was a turning point for you.
Yes. Well, my sister's passing was like devastation because I wanted to break out so bad, and when she died, I felt like, oh shit, I have to just stay. I have to stay and just deal with this and like not hurt my parents.
Right. And you're 13.
I'm 13 at this point. And, I think that I always talk about this, about my mother's journey at like losing one child in a plane crash and then you losing the other one to being transgender. You know what I'm saying? It felt like I know that my sister's death was devastating, but it was like finite. I think for my mother, for her, my queerness, my transness was never like, there was maybe a hope that she can make it be what she wanted it to be.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was a journey in and of itself.
So just doing a little research on you, I know that there's a split journey that happens because you do go away to New York, and your parents have an idea during that time of who you are.
Well, I came out right before I left.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Yeah, I came out to them.
You came out as?
I came out as gay.
Okay.
Again, there weren't really, like, whenever we heard the word trans or transsexual, it referred to what we understood as men who dressed as women who were crazy.
Yeah.
That's what was out there because that was what was on the media and everything like that. And so when I didn't even think about what the flip could be if you were assigned female at birth. I just was like, oh, transsexuals are not cool people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I identified as gay initially, and then I identified as boy, B-O-I, because so much of my queerness I always knew was related to gender and not necessarily my sexuality,
Is BOI something common to identify as?
It used to be.
It used to be.
I don't
okay.
know if anybody does it anymore.
Okay.
Stud, boy, these are things that usually people of color use to describe masculine women.
Okay. Yeah. One of your characters was BOI. In, was it?
Revelations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
How do you know that?
Because I did some research on you.
It's like bringing things out the archive.
Right? So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I go to New York, and it was just kind of nutty and rough between my family and I. And it was great in a lot of different ways because I got to, start my journey and figure out who I was as a person.
Wait,
But-
I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but
Yeah.
you came out as gay to your parents, and what was their response then?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My father was kind of like, he tried to be as accepting as possible, but I think that for him, the fact that he lost my sister, that he was sort of like, there's no option to get angry or mad here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He flipped at first, but he rolled back real quick. But he didn't understand, and he, in his way, he went to a conference on gay and lesbian health, I think it was.
That's great, though.
Yeah, it was. But it's so funny to hear him. He's like, these inborn conditions. And I was like, oh my God. Anyway, but he also had a lot of shame around it. I think that it's one thing to accept your child because you're just like, okay, but then you're telling them to be quiet about it, or you're worried about what other people will say, or you just don't even want to talk about it. Like, I think some of the most painful things were just subtle things that would happen where I would go to a Sri Lankan function and I would see them and they wouldn't want to talk to me,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, like, I'm your fucking kid, But so anyway, all this to say that
And your mom, how did
she wanted to change me. She was all about trying to she was like, this is not right, this is wrong. Like, maybe you could just be like the monks or the nuns or whatever.
like
And it's not-
asexual,
asexual,
or
yeah. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I would bring different female partners that I was seeing all the time. Mm-hmm. I would even bring not dudes that I was seeing, but like I would make them kind of wonder,
Right.
but whenever it was like a woman, they would be like, okay, wait, what's going
happening?
on?
And
Yeah.
you were sexually active at this point.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I was like,
When did that
boy.
start? When did that start?
I think I started fucking like right after high school.
After high school.
After high school,
Okay.
yeah. And
So you graduated, you got busy.
I got busy, boy.
Yeah.
And like it's like all those hormones that are pent up from puberty, and then you're just like unleashed, right? So yeah, that was a fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you go to New York.
So I go to New York, and I'm learning how to become a queer adult. I'm also learning to become somebody who says and lives by the fact that they are a creator, like an artistic creator. And I had beautiful sort of, as a gender nonconforming person back then, like there were no acting classes, there were no things that I could just kind of find in order to like lift me in my career. And so I was being mentored by some incredibly fantastic, incredible, amazing, loving queer artists of color in New York. And so they offered space and opportunity, and I became very, probably more sharp. I mean, I was also politically raised here in LA through the Revolutionary Communist Party, so I understood the power of art. And these people were like, that's also so important in our work, but also who you are is so crucial for how you get your story out. You become who you want to be if you pay attention and you reflect back on your story. So there was stuff happening on both sides.
How amazing for you to have kind of been confined in Lancaster, where you had to conform in a way to a standard that wasn't your standard. And then, I mean, just imagining that New York City, you were in New York City.
Yeah.
Right. Must have been
In
so
Brooklyn,
freeing.
But yeah.
Yeah, in the borough. But
Yeah.
it was still like that vibe,
Yeah.
and you could find your people.
Yes.
And people of color.
Absolutely.
Who probably grew up similarly
Yeah.
to the way you did in their own cultures.
I had that in UCLA a lot more too.
Yeah.
But I think that in New York, and I also, even in my high school, the small amount of people of color that were there, we all banded together.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like my community, when I talk about it, is very pan people of color. That's my comfortability. It's not just with queer people or just with South Asian people, but it is with a whole bunch of different people. But in New York was where I could do the same kind of journey, but artistically. Mm-hmm. So that was the difference.
And so that was where you got inspired to start the path that you're on now.
Yeah, well, kind of that happened in college anyway.
Okay.
But I think that when I saw other queer people making a living making art, that made me realize, like, oh, like there's something here that I could live and do.
And then I know that hip-hop was part of your life, even just growing up in Lancaster, right?
Yeah.
That you had a lot of hip-hop influence. You bring that into your spoken word.
Mm-hmm.
Is there other things that you pulled from to create the art that you do now?
I think that hip-hop just being kind of like what I was listening to and the culture, like the cultural culture that I was living in, I feel like that's kind of just there. Like a lot of my work earlier was very hip-hop and spoken word, and I think that who I'm stylistically like, even in comedy, are people who have also come from that culture. You know what I'm saying? Whether they're black or if it's like John Leguizamo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think that right now, who I can say, like, if hip-hop is like the tea that I've been infused in, then I would say that how I taste on other people's palate is I've created a mix of, like, my father's humor and the humor, everything from Benny Hill to Monty Python to Chris Rock to, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just kind of like a big mashup, you know?
So your art's coming together in New York and you're honing it and you're living it. You have to come out as gay, though, a second time to your parents. How come?
Yeah, because I had a girlfriend.
Okay.
I had a girlfriend, and, you know, like, I always make the joke that, like, when you think that if you came out once that people would remember that shit. But when people say that coming out is a process, what they really mean is people have selective hearing. Because it was like I had to prove, it was almost like the thing that nailed the coffin shut for my mother. Like, it was like, oh, now there's no turning back. And so she tried everything she could to, like, just be anti this relationship, anti me being gay. And this was still when she was sending me around to all these, like, holy people trying to change me. And
So were you back in California at this point?
So I would go to Mend.
Okay.
I knew that if I was challenged to walk my truth as an artist, so much of that meant that I needed to walk my truth as a person. And this is just like the responsibility placed on my shoulders by people who, like, didn't grow up with half the shit that I did as queer people. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they were like, if we did it, we wouldn't ask you to do this if we haven't done it. Right? So I would go back to Mend. Like, I always tell students that I talk to and in the college university circuit, I'm like, you know, there's some parents who shouldn't have been parents, and, like, that's just the truth of it. But if you feel like there's a little sliver of hope, allow for that seed to grow. And that means that you'll go and you'll try and mend, and you'll be shut down, doors in your face type thing. And then you build yourself up and you get strong with your community, with your queer people who love you, who have gone through the same thing, who will let you laugh and cry at the same time. And then you build yourself up, and then when you're ready, you try again.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
It's with anything that we really want. Like, and then, you know, at some point, hopefully you realize whether or not it's actually worth it. And I feel like 9 times out of 10, when you understood that there to be a sliver, it will be fruitful.
Yeah. Well, and there was a point, and I love what you just said. I think that's really beautiful, and it really shows your compassion for your parents, because you understand that they were dealing with not just the loss of an ideal, but they believe themselves to be dealing with an actual loss.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm assuming somehow the idea of marriage came up.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that when you got that? Was it a
that
call?
was the first time. That was the first
Okay.
time. That was over the phone. And so, yeah, that was when I came out the initial time, because they were trying to arrange my marriage. To a man. Well, I mean, it was like my father was calling me and he was like, "Look, we found 2 men for you," and I was like, "What for?" and he was like, "You don't know what the hell you're gonna do after college," and I was like, "I'm good." He was like, "No, what are you talking about? They're 2 doctors," and I'm like, "I'm good. And then he was like, "Well, do you have a boyfriend?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Then what's the bloody problem? There are 2 doctors in North Carolina, and you can pick which one you want. They're brothers." And I was like, "Wow, that's really feminist of you."
Yeah.
So, but that's how I came out, is through that thing out.
Do you think that he thought you were going to be excited?
You know what I think? I think that they sniffed it.
Mm-hmm.
And they just were, it was like this, denial is a river in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Because I feel like there's no way my father, of all people, would call me to arrange my marriage. If anybody, it would have been my mother.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
Yeah.
So somewhere in there, you get the surgery. Is that correct?
Well, we can't call it the surgery.
Okay, sorry. Tell me.
But
what do I say?
This is so. At some point, I medically transitioned.
Okay.
Or I started my medical transition. But I also feel like for trans people, a lot of people are like, if you say the surgery or the thing, like, it kind of puts a cap on it, and I feel like that's not really a trans story. I don't think it's anybody's story. Like, are we done transitioning?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we're ever changing, ever evolving.
Well,
know?
And that's what transition means, right? Is that change. So
my transition starts incorporating a medical aspect to it. So some people say that they're trans and they never get anything medical done. Mm-hmm. That's how they identify.
Right.
But my journey involved medically transitioning. I had top surgery, and generally I'm very open with what surgeries that I've had, but you're not supposed to ask people, trans people, like what their medical transition is.
Okay.
But because I talk about it with context, in that as I share my story across the globe, I try and say how this decision first, because I only started hormone replacement therapy like 6-7 years after top surgery. And top surgery is a double mastectomy for people who don't know. But that surgery was one of the most selfish and self-loving decisions I had ever made. And I had to get to that point. Like, things were nutty in my mind. I kept trying to figure out how to get more happy. And, I was making money, but I was on the road all the time. I was exhausted. I felt like I could never, I wanted to be the me I had dreamed of when I was little. You know what I'm saying? And so that decision was probably the biggest decision in my life. Mm-hmm. And I never, ever had any point of regret on that. No.
Thank you for that lesson, so that I'll know going forward how to speak about it, because it's really important. It reminds me a little bit of myself. I was in a marriage for a long time where I wasn't, not because of anything else, but I didn't feel like I could be authentic and still be loved. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't authentic. Mm-hmm. And then the decision to leave that marriage and to find my authentic self was the best thing that I ever did, even though it was so painful. Yeah. And it was not at anybody. Right. It was just something I needed to do for myself.
Totally understand.
So it reminds me of that kind of, I need to do this because I'm in pain. Yeah. And nobody else is going to solve this for me. I need to figure out how to be authentically me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely.
I want to talk about your art because you're really busy. Yeah. And I know you're on the road a lot. But before we do that, there's just one moment that I wanted to have you discuss, because I love this story of the first time your mom gets your pronoun right.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. So I had come to her house and well, the thing is, she still doesn't get it right.
Okay, but she did that time.
But it was so interesting. Like, she flips back and forth. But now it just is silly because she'll be like, and she'll refer to me, and people are like, this lady don't know what's going on.
Who's she talking about?
Yeah, who's she talking about? Which probably in their heads, they're like, oh, immigrants. But I went to her house to tell her, it was another mending situation. And she and I weren't talking on the phone a whole lot at all. She, like, if it was anything, it was just, like, we weren't even connecting. In fact, I don't even think I recall talking to her much on the phone. If anything, I would talk to my father. And I went over to her house, and I was like, I'm just going to tell her, just kind of let her know, like, this is what's up, and, she can choose to do what she wants to do with it. And I can make my decision based off of that. So I went to her house to tell her that I had a girlfriend who I'm still with, no longer girlfriend, but partner in life. And then I had to tell her about top surgery. And so I got to her house, and she was, I told her that, and there's a whole story around that, but I told her that she was kind of okay. And all of a sudden, because she was in the kitchen cooking, and she was like, I need ginger. I was like, ginger? Okay. I just told you I had surgery. And she kind of had some inkling towards, or inkling about the fact that I was making decisions for myself. But I'm trying to make this very short. But we go to Trader Joe, and I'm tripping. I'm tripping because I just come out for the third time, and I'm thinking she's, like, going to lose her cookies in the Trader Joe.
Right.
And I'm like, we get the ginger. She's running low on her hot cocoa, so I'm looking all over the damn shop for it. And I get to the place where it is, but she was already talking to the clerk to find out where it was. And I'm looking up and down the aisles. I can't find her. I'm thinking she's crumbled up somewhere crying. And then I find her in the hot cocoa section, and I was like, hey, Amma, I already found it for you. And she looks up at me, and she looks up at the clerk, and she goes, oh, don't worry. He already got it for me. And I was like, like, because just a half hour before that, we didn't even talk about pronouns. We didn't even, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, Oma, you just called me he. And she was like, you're confusing me. And she slapped me across the face.
That's so awesome.
That immigrant love.
Oh, no.
But yeah.
But you were still happy.
I was still happy because it felt like there was some air finally. A little bit of that air let out the tire, and everybody could just breathe. And it's been a journey even since then, but I would say my partner kind of cushions a lot of it.
So, again, for me, as a writer of color, I'm also a person in recovery from drugs and alcohol. I'm almost 11 years sober. So there is the feedback I get from people of color who are in recovery, it's very important to them that I speak the way that I do about it. I'm imagining that for the communities of color, to have you going through your journey out loud is really important.
I think so. I mean, I get it reflected back to me by community. I think that it's also in the way that it's shared. And I get it from people also who are not queer, trans, or people of color. But it means the most when somebody who has all these other options out there, like Instagram, YouTube, like people sharing their story, but there's something about the lives telling of the story that it's the magic of theater. It's the magic of storytelling that is so impactful.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that, the reflection,
That's what you've been doing lately. You've been going around and telling your story or telling stories and entertaining people live.
Yeah, I do stand up here, and not so much in LA, but like mostly on the road, college, university circuit, festival circuit. Sometimes if I'm in another city that doesn't have that big of a comedy scene, I'll do those cities as well. And then I do solo shows as well. And yeah, just doing that.
Yeah. And was there anything that you wanted to tell me that you feel like it's important for people to know?
Yeah. Well, when you talk about the only one in the room, I just kind of remember this one instance, and this has happened to me countless times. But as a masculine presenting, and when we're talking about this is my masculinity is associated with black masculinity, right? It's associated with urban masculinity. And so when I remember this always happened, but in so many different realms, my body is policed in a particular way that isn't typically what is South Asian. like I don't get the terrorist stereotype on me. I get the other stereotypes.
Yes.
And so I remember going in to see a friend of mine show in a theater, a small theater, and it was all like white people, and I was literally the only one who was not white. And I sat in the front, and the place is packed, and there's a seat empty next to me, and to the left, and a seat empty next to me on the right. And throughout the whole show, and then when I looked in the back, there were people standing too, and I was like, okay. And I knew what was happening here, and even when I went in, there was shade, and even when I left, there was shade. But I was like, you know, as somebody who is queer, as somebody who's transmasculine, as somebody who's of color, as somebody who's an immigrant, as somebody who gets profiled as Black or Latinx, don't tell me these good white people in the audience aren't racist. You know what I'm saying? Don't tell me that if I heard from any one of them, oh, the stuff that's happening in the news is terrible, the police, like, don't tell me that shit, because you haven't unpacked your own shit. You know, there's a whole damn room and there's empty seats on both sides of me. Come on now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I even moved over at some point thinking that somebody was going to, you know, I moved again. And at the end, I was still the one in the middle with these two seats next to me. So I just think about that imagery and I'm like, queer people are already dealing with their own stuff. Like, are people tripping off of me gender-wise or sexuality or how I present myself? And then layered on top of that is when they're of color, and layered on top of that is how chocolate they are. Sometimes I just want people to be like, just imagine all the layers going into this world with. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you want to not sit next to me in a theater.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. Scott's going to have some questions for you about that when we finish.
You get a whole
but
list.
yeah, he has a whole list.
Just kidding.
So thank you for all of that. And now we're going to get into the second segment of the podcast. One of my favorite parts, it's called Dear Laura. All right, so this is from Christina. And she says, Dear Laura, my name is Christina, and I identify as pansexual. I am also married to a quote-unquote him and have a grown child. And oftentimes I'm out with others, but not to my son. And there never seems to be a right time or place. I'm wondering if it's all fear-based or whether I should let the conversation organically come about.
I think that, I mean, I want to empathize with her fear and her pain. But on another level, I'm almost like, well, remember when all the stuff that's in you that around what you heard as a pansexual person, pansexual meaning that you're attracted to genders across the spectrum. And so sometimes I'm like, reflect back on your internalized queer phobias, you know, in order to understand that it's not necessarily about your child here, it's really about you, you know?
Yeah.
And how you want to sort of just share, like, you might not be accepting so many parts of yourself, and so therefore you can't fathom sharing that with there's so much fear around it. And I feel like kids these days, it's like you could tell them anything and they're going to get it reflected back to them quicker out in the world or in the internet. So like I'm teaching this course right now, the coming out, coming home thing, and anything that, and it's really about like art as a way to sort of do deep reflective work, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many layers upon layers. We're never gonna stop unlearning all the things that we've been taught. And so I was just told by my partner yesterday that DNA, you know, in intergenerational trauma, there's like an on switch in the DNA, right? So like, let's say somebody had PTSD from a war and you're carrying that, but if you work to unpack that, then it turns off. So you don't get to share that to your
the next generation. Yeah.
So I just think about that and I'm like, if you own that, then other people get to own that as well. Like we have to keep working on unpacking all of this stuff that has been put on us. It's not our fault, you know? And I think that really in this letter, it's a lot of self-judgment for herself that I'm picking up on, which is what's most sad about the situation.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I have that. Like all of us have that. And it's just like, why do we do this to ourselves? And then we stop our children and our nieces and nephews, whatever, from learning and experiencing the expansiveness of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not doing anybody a favor when we're just giving snippets of ourselves.
No, that makes so much sense. And it's like she's scared to make her child uncomfortable because she's scared that will make her uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If her child might
reject her.
Yeah. Right. And what you're saying is that, you know, children, especially children nowadays, and we don't know how old this child is, but the awareness, children are intuitive too.
Yeah.
You know, they know when shit's wrong, and until they have a way to identify what's wrong, usually they make it about them.
Yeah.
Not that this is wrong,
Yeah.
but if there's
Yeah.
a secret being kept,
Yeah.
then that would be the thing that vibrates.
The vibration, yeah, absolutely. I
Like
totally feel
what are
that.
you not saying? Why is that weird when you see that woman?
Yeah.
When you're
Yep.
with dad or
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great answer for her. Thank you. Yeah.
My heart goes out though because I almost am like, what are you sharing with your child if you have so much shame? Because then the child might also be stuck in binary where it might be hard for them to grasp it now.
Right.
But the work needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free your mind. The rest will follow.
Yes.
All right. So can you tell us, I know that you've been traveling and performing. What's next for you? Where can people find you on
Right.
social media? Like, tell us all of that.
Yeah, my social media handle for everything is DLocoKid. That's DLOCOKID.
This apostrophe, right?
No, there's no apostrophe.
Okay, there's no
It's just
apostrophe.
for the handle, it's just
I
straight.
see. Yeah.
That's like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever.
And there is like an imposter Dilo who's a rapper.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
he has such a huge following.
Yeah, but don't Google him.
No, don't.
Yeah.
Because I think one of his songs is called "No More Hoes,"
Yes.
and somebody was like, "Really, D?" And I was like,
No,
"That's not me.
that's not
That's
you.
not me."
That's so not you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for this. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you're helping a lot of people, and it really helps somebody like me to hear the language and the understanding of the transition, and we really appreciate you being a part of The Only One in the Room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and stay tuned for our bonus after show, Scott Talks, coming up next.